long enough.
Yeah, good thing you chose an easy spot. Epilogue, or Chapter 34. Wild colors and rambunctious sounds closed around me, resolving into darkness, which fit more my feelings. I pulled out my phone and crossed Cloud Cuckoo Land off of my list of unknown worlds, and I pasted into the list of worlds where I was sure Blaze hadn't gone. Both lists were growing each day. The first list was growing a lot faster than the second. Still hadn't found him. And until I found him, there would be no progress. Lately I'd felt kind of hopeless. Though I'd searched at least a dozen worlds in the last month and crossed them off of the list. Even so, it was going so slowly, and Blaze didn't even know that I was looking for him until I found him. Scar said, "What took you so long?" And I tried to hide what I was feeling so she wouldn't have to worry about it. And I said, "Sorry, I just wanted to make sure Blaze wasn't there." She said, "So he's not in Cloud Cuckoo Land?" And I said, no, but that's all right. I said, "Where are we going tonight?" And I looked around, recognizing that I'd come through in a forest, or at least a stand of trees. It looked like there was grass on the far side, like just grass on the far side of the trees, no more trees. And Scar says, "You didn't recognize it?" Actually, that doesn't surprise me. She took my hand and kept going, didn't give me a real answer. I kept looking around, looking for something that I might recognize, and I turned back and saw a tree in the little stand where we'd been that, for most people, it was just a tree, but to me that tree bore the weight of 2 worlds. And I thought, wait. We came out of the stand of trees and into the grass, and the moon overhead was just a sliver, so it was hard to see, but light shone off of benches a bit of a ways off in a concrete pathway that wound through the park. I recognized those benches. That was where I first rejected Scar, and where I first heard her insane story about people who could travel to other worlds. And Scar said, "There it is." And it felt odd to be back on Earth. We walked through the park and saw the city around, lights on despite the nighttime. I couldn't tell how late it was, but the lights were colorful and shone out. They showed that this place was quiet. This wasn't a place of trying to rebuild or fight for survival like I'd been used to for the last few months. It was just quiet. A hard life, but easy at the same time. We came to the end of the walkway and stood in front of my old blue-green car. I must have looked odd. I just stared at it for a while before Scar finally jingled the keys. I said, "Where did you get those?" And she said, "I pick up all kinds of things traveling across the universe." She tossed me the keys and said, "Get in." I went and opened the door for her, and then got on my side and sat down. It took a minute to just feel the steering wheel in my hands and the dashboard there. It was odd to be back in my car. I turned on the engine, put the car in reverse, let off the clutch, and immediately stalled. Scar burst out laughing. And I said, it's hard, okay? I haven't driven a stick shift for, what, 9 months. And Scar says, well, it's hard when you don't have destiny to help you with everything. I didn't tell her that for a moment I had actually tried Desire to stop the car from stalling, but I restarted the car, put more on the gas, and eased us out of the parking lot as the map of my old hometown came back to my mind, and I drove the streets back to my house. Scar turned on the radio and started flipping through my stations and laughed again uncontrollably at my classical station. It was from my days of ballroom. I enjoyed hearing it, but I couldn't get her to say anything, to stop laughing. But eventually we got to my parents' house. I turned the car and parked it. It wasn't the place where I was living, but it was my house. And we went through the garage door, and golden light flooded into the garage as we stepped into the entryway and into the kitchen, where the smell of my mom's pasta sauce and garlic bread came to my nose. And she was cooking at the stove. I mean, usually my family is up late watching a movie or just quiet. My dad's reading a book and my mom's working on one of her projects, but they must have known that Scar and I would be coming. But it looked like it was pretty much done. And my mom came from the stove and gave me a hug and asked how we were doing as my dad came into the room and began to set out some nice plates at the table. And he said, "How's Demaya's cry doing?" And I said, "Well, really well. We have to do a lot of reinforcing on our structures since gravity has shifted on that planet, but there's not nearly as much to do as there was the last time the Prometheans and the Ceremaeans had a war." I said, "We're getting close to finishing fortifications and things are coming back to normal." And my mom said, "Some normal." I helped my dad set out places and things, and there were 2 extra places being set than there were people. And I was about to ask when there was a knock at the door. And Scar took the forks from my hand and said, "Why don't you check the door?" And I looked at her with amused suspicion as I went to the door. I already knew who it was going to be, but it was still a surprise to open the door and to see Darren and Falair standing there in stylish American clothes, which were something I wasn't used to seeing anymore. I hadn't seen Darren in a casual circumstance in years. It had been so long. And it was so good to see them and to see him doing well and up and about and talking. And I hugged him and I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Better." And I could definitely see that. We came to the table as he said, "Yeah, the headaches are still there, but they're getting better. I still can't sit still." And Falair said, "I don't know if you were ever able to do that," as she spoke with her slight accent. And he said, No, I used to be able to." He said, "But the memory's coming back. In fact," he said as we sat down, "I just had a memory of one time when G fell out of my tree, climbing my tree in my backyard." And Scar said, "Oh, I love this story." As she took a bite of a breadstick. I looked at her and I said, "How do you know this story?" And she just raised her eyebrows and kept eating as everyone sat down to the table. We began to dish out food as Darren began to tell his story. I looked around. No, things wouldn't ever be the same. Never again. But I wouldn't give anything to change where I was now. End of G Part 3. War for Demise. End of G.
that's my story. There have been things that have happened since, but nothing quite as cohesive and coherent as what you've already heard. At this point, it's been 7 years since the beginning of this whole thing. A little more than 6 since it all ended. And it's been crazy. I've been up to a lot, just running the country and things. Demise Cry is doing better than ever. There was a little dip a few years back, but we took care of that, and we've just been on the upside of things. It's been great. Blaze still gone, and I spend every week a little bit of time just trying to look for him, in addition to what we're already doing to continue to fix up the things that the Prophithians have been doing. We're cleaning up the universe and taking world after world off of my list. And it's gotten towards shrinking instead of growing. But yeah, I'm confident that we'll find him though. Scar is Scar, and she's continued to do good, saving world after world, and she's a little bit less Scar than she used to be, but she's still there. Darren is doing well. Falair is doing so well. They are so happy together. And Darren's different than he was before, but he's doing good. Andrew's finished high school, got a little bit of college under his belt, which I'm sure surprises you. It surprised me, and Blaze? I'm sorry, I have to go.